BBQ Central Show, let's go. The #1 barbecue show on the low. Your host Greg Rampy, the grilling masters.
This is the best moments of the BBQ Central Show in 10 minutes or less. Ever wish you could re-listen to your favorite interview or segment? Do you enjoy hearing older shows for the first time in years? Then the best moments of the BBQ Central Show in 10 minutes or less is just what you need. Thanks for listening and enjoy the show.
Whoa, how about that? You spoke, Greg listened. We have new production music. Thanks to your requests, he made the investment based on your input. And we got the big voice, Mr. David Lee, riding with us from this point forward. And as he mentioned, it's another edition of the best moments of the BBQ Central Show in 10 minutes or less. Today, doubleheader from September 20th, 2010. Melissa Cookston, the winningest woman in barbecue, stopped by, talked about a whole lot of stuff. Show karma, dual contest, barbecue classes, the history of Yazoo's Delta Barbecue, and a lot more. Let's get right to it. Here's Greg and Melissa from September 20th, 2010.
Pitmaster of Yazoo's Delta Q and friend of the show, Melissa Cookston. Melissa, how are you tonight?
I'm good. How are you, Greg?
I'm doing absolutely fantastic, Melissa. Thanks for asking. So lots of different things that we can talk about tonight in terms of barbecue, outdoor live fire grilling, television for that matter. But first things first, you were competing this past weekend over in Murfreesboro, Illinois for that special dual event, much kind of like the one out there in Washington, D.C., where they pit both KCBS one day, MBN the next day. And you guys took place in the MBN and won it. No surprise to me, of course. But how did the whole event go for you? What's the condition like out there? And for the people that haven't been to a dual event, kind of set it up for us visually and how that whole thing runs.
Yeah, in Murfreesboro, it was actually all done in the same day.
Oh, wow.
So we only had 10 minutes between blind turn-ins if we chose to do both the Kansas City and the MBN. So we opted just to do the Memphis style simply because I didn't want to get behind on anything since we're a two-person team. You know, it makes it difficult and, be late because once you get behind on something like that, you're behind the rest of the day.
Were there a lot of teams that decided to take part in both of them? I mean, 10-minute turn-ins just seems absolutely outrageous.
Actually, there were, I think, 56 teams and only 7 teams participated in both.
So the odds are, if you decided to do that, the odds of winning were pretty good. But if you wanted to go, one or the other side, you were pretty much shooting yourself in the foot the minute you got behind.
Exactly. And we just didn't want to take that chance. We're kind of in a points chase right now for Team of the Year, so we decided to stick with the MBN. And our next door neighbors, QOW, decided just to do the Kansas City portion. So since we weren't competing, we got to visit a lot more.
Those Mike Wozniak and Beth, certainly great people out there doing very well. They've regained top spot of the Team of the Year standings, and seems like it could possibly come back down to the last contest as it did last year. But as you look, and it's kind of unique to be, your MBN and your neighbors with somebody that's KCBS, and obviously you have a lot of time where you're focusing on your specific task at hand, but as you are able to kind of look over the fence a little bit and you see what he's doing, they see what you're doing, is it kind of a good learning experience and trading notes kind of a thing, or are you guys pretty much keeping to yourself during the competition?
Well, from 9 o'clock in the morning when we first start thinking about breaking down the hog for our blind box, we're pretty much assholes and elbows for the rest of the day. So I really didn't get to look over there much. But Mike was kind enough to bring us some samples, and I believe Pete handed him some out the back of the kitchen tent while I was doing presentation. So we didn't get to visit a whole lot while we were doing our presentation for the Memphis part or anything. But, the night before and after, certainly. But I just want you to know that Mike almost blew the karma and the mojo.
Do I even want to know about it?
Well, let me tell you. He didn't get a call in chicken or in pork.
Oh.
So I'm, all anxious. And, of course, they already called out the MBN stuff. And Pete hollers out, Mike, you're not holding Beth's hand. You're not holding Beth's hand. And so immediately I had to grab his hand and put the mojo in there.
Right.
And he got 2 calls in the last 2 categories and slid right in with the grand, but he had me worried.
Yeah, I think for the people that don't know, Melissa and Mike are a few of the teams that actually fly the Barbecue Central radio show banner, and it's kind of like that unspoken word and that power given out that, you hang those signs, and that instead of having to ask for the karma every week, or depending on how many competitions you do, you hang that banner up, and it's pretty much guaranteed, it's a lock that it's going to work, and certainly it's held true. You win the MBN side, Mike wins KCBS side, things couldn't be better.
I know, and I'm so sorry you're out of banners.
I know. Well, what can I tell you? So it's just one of those things. The guys that have them now, they know the power that they yield and wield, so we need to be careful with that. Dangerous stuff. So were you a triple entry this past week, or did you just do hog?
We did whole hog, shoulder, and ribs. And we won it with ribs.
Won it with ribs. I was going to say, what percentage of the time, and I'm sure you have at least some type of percentage when you're in there, is it usually the whole hog that wins it for you guys when you win overall grand champ, or has it kind of floated in between the various three categories? Well,
at different times of the year, we'll get on a streak. Charlotte, North Carolina, we won the shoulder. Typically, shoulder's not where we come in. We'll either win it with a hog or a rib. And we get on streaks with ribs, and then we'll go back to the hog. I do love fall hogs. There's something about these hogs that we get in the fall that are they're absolutely wonderful. So I look to go on a hog streak if we can. If we could possibly get through there and win anymore, I would say my prediction would be hog is on a streak next. But we've been winning with ribs.
Are ribs the spares, or you do baby backs?
We do loin backs.
Any particular reason? Have you had not success with the spares and gone to loin backs?
In Memphis style, if you cook a spare, you will probably come in somewhere in the bottom 5.
Wow.
Yeah. Typically Memphis style is all loin backs. Now, when we cook Kansas City, we do St. Louis cut. But for the Memphis side, we strictly stick to loins.
Now, you'd mentioned that you're in a middle of a points chase. You're currently top the leaderboard there for Memphis Barbecue Network Team of the Year, but there is obviously 2 big competitions coming up this weekend. You have the American Royal Invitational and Open, but to keep that points chase alive, you're going to go ahead and pass that one up, go down to Covington, Tennessee to an MBN network competition. Tell us about that particular one, why you chose to go there.
Well, that's where Pete's originally from, and that's where he cooked his first contest 22 years ago.
Wow.
So that's his home contest. The organizer there is the absolute nicest lady in the world. There's nothing she wouldn't do for the teams. And, we like to go to those contests where the people are so friendly and they want you there. When we got invitations to the Royal and the Jack, I kind of figured we wouldn't do both. We chose the Jack, so we're going to stick with MBN until, nobody, hopefully we'll get to where nobody can catch us for the Team of the Year. And, we won't have to chase it all the way to the end like the Kansas City guys will.
Melissa Cookston joining us here, pitmaster of Yazoo's Delta Q. Melissa, when you get the invitation for both, how do you decide which one that you're going to go to? Is it because the Jack has all that mystique and all the history behind it? Or was this the fact that the American Royal was just too close to where Covington, Tennessee was, and you wanted to cook that regardless?
Well, the Jack actually sent me an invitation, and the Royal forgot me.
Oh.
Someone inquired on my behalf. I said I didn't get my invitation, and they said, "Oh, we're so sorry, but when somebody takes the time to put a postmark on something and put it in my name and send it to me, I kind of lean toward those people."
There you go, right? Plus, it seems from all the people I've talked to that to get into the Jack, just the whole drawing process, then there's that whole history and mystique behind it. Are you even looking at that right now? Is that even on the radar, or are you still a couple weeks off from really starting a game plan for that?
Yeah, I've heard stories about the Jack. I've never been myself. There's a lot of celebrity judges, and the Jack is very prestigious to go to. So, we feel like we're in a little bit over our heads simply because we hadn't cooked much Kansas City this year. We've been strictly Memphis for the most part. And, with celebrity judges, you never know what's going to happen. I know they do have some great certified judges, but, you always hear the scuttlebutt on the circuit. We're just going to go with what we normally do for Kansas City and hope that we can at least get a call or two in there. But we're not looking for much. We're just going, for the camaraderie and the prestige of being at that contest.
How is your white meat doing this year? Because you have to turn in white meat down there.
Yeah, I'm freaking out about that blind box. Those of you who don't know me, I'm OCD.
To put in your request for a future show, please contact Jon Solberg via email at jon@bbqcentralshow.com.
So let's go ahead and kind of back it up a little bit for people that might be new to the show or haven't gone back and done the due diligence for the archives. What's the history of Yazoo's Delta Q? Where does the name come up, and where do we lead up to present day?
My husband was cooking when we got married, and he introduced me to competition barbecue, which I immediately fell in love with because I'm too old to play basketball and I don't like golf. So, I immediately jumped in, and, we cook. We're just a husband and wife team. We cook all three categories. Yazoo's Delta Q comes from the Mississippi Delta region. There's a Yazoo City, Yazoo River, and that's kind of what I wanted our barbecue to emanate, was the Mississippi Delta. And, the name Yazoo's is easy to remember. Most people don't pronounce it correctly, but that's okay. But, we're always last on the list, and that's okay, too. I like the name. It's catchy, and, it's who we are now. Nobody knows Melissa, but they know there's Yazoo's, so.
Now, for the people that aren't as familiar with the MBN style of cooking, it's a little bit different. You have the three categories, all pork. And then, of course, the judging that we've talked about in the past is completely different than some of the other sanctioning bodies out there. So give us a little up to speed on what MBN is all about and how their competitions are run.
Sure. We cook whole hog, shoulder, and ribs are our three main categories. We have blind judging, which starts before on-site judging. And then we have one judge at a time come on site. You have three judges in each category. They take the top three teams from each category with blind and on-site judges' scores and determine the top three, and a set of four finals judges go around to the 9 finalists. You have the top three in hog, the top three in shoulder, and the top three in ribs. And those 4 judges deem the best of the best that day, and that's who's crowned grand champion.
And what kind of a turnout are you usually getting for contests? Is it similar along any type of sanctioning body where some contests are just going to pull more teams in or not, or do you see kind of a standard number showing up at your competitions that you show up to?
Like Covington is the world's oldest contest. I mean, they have local teams that cook that contest every single year. And, they'll get 30, 35 teams. Murfreesboro, Illinois, where we were last weekend, is the same way. Charlotte, they had 25 teams or so. But, you get in some of these smaller towns where they haven't really been exposed to competition barbecue, and the local teams aren't coming out and competing as much. You might only have 10 or 15 teams. So, somewhere between 15 and 35 usually.
Melissa Cookston of Yazoo's Delta Q joining us here on the show. Melissa, have you seen kind of a tail off in teams showing up here over the last 16, 17 months just because of the economic influence it's had on the sport?
I really thought I would, but not so much. I mean, I think that people are maybe cooking less categories, or they're being a little more choosy about which contest they go to. But there's a lot of new teams cooking the Memphis style now. So really, I think our numbers have remained about the same. I know we've grown substantially the number of contests that we have every year. So, that always helps too. Anytime, you can grow like that, you bring in new teams. And fortunately, we've been doing some barbecue schools with some new teams that that we hadn't had in the past. We've had 10 or 12 teams come to barbecue school, so we're really excited about that. Excited for them to get on the circuit and see what they can do.
Now, there's almost a limitless supply of things that you can cook on these days. What does Yazoo's Delta Q prefer as their cooker of choice?
We have 4 backwoods smokers, ranging from a little bitty chubby up to a hog cooker. And that's all we use. We're strictly backwoods team.
Anything in particular that the backwoods drew you to versus some of the other similar cabinet-type smokers?
Well, they're double wall insulated, so I'm not getting any younger. I need a little more sleep at night because we fought barrel grills for years. And, with the double wall insulation, you maintain heat so much better. If we open the door, we recapture that heat in 3 to 4 minutes as opposed to 30 or 40 minutes, and you're not fighting those huge temperature fluctuations. So that's what I like about them the most.
And one of the things that you had just mentioned here a couple minutes ago was the classes. And it seems, regardless of who you're talking to, that there has certainly been a proliferation of cooking classes, people that are winning or putting classes on. So what I've heard, and one of the people that was actually on the television show when I had her on, Danielle Demoski of BBQ, was talking about, she didn't really know for these classes that are being put on that are kind of deemed as tell-all classes or we show everything. She wasn't necessarily believing that everybody was showing all of their cards. So how do you structure your class? Is it this is what we do and we're sharing everything, or do you hold some stuff back to remain that competitive edge? Because I wouldn't share anything if I was putting on a class.
Yeah, we do share all, and I'll tell you why. Because I'm not going to take somebody's money and not tell them what I'm doing. With that being said, I can give a recipe to 40 people, and they can cook that same recipe, and you're going to have 40 different sauces. We do what we do, and we've been doing it for lots of years. I'm not afraid to say, hey, here's my recipe for sauce. Please try it. Please use it. Or showing them, look, this is how we skin a hog. We really don't have any big secrets. The key to success is all about being consistent. And, you have to cook the same rib this week that you won with last week, and you have to be able to replicate that week after week after week. And the only way to do that is to cook every week. When we first started doing classes, I was concerned, about, we're going to teach all these people what we do, and then they're going to beat us, and, then we have no way to make money. But I wouldn't feel good about taking people's money and not showing them what we do. And, I'm not saying, I've never said, look, this is what you have to do. I tell people, this is what we do. Feel free to use it, but do what works best for you. This is just what works for us.
Do you think that there will be a point, or that there is a point now where the teams are taking these classes and they want to kind of, I don't want to say skip ahead, but they definitely want to get ahead of the learning curve. So instead of taking the base of knowledge that you have given them, or whoever class that they've taken has given them, and making it their own in some form or fashion, they just use whatever they've just been taught and turn right around to the next competition and use it, kind of leading to a non-original flavor profile for a certain amount of teams. Do you think that you're either in the midst of something like that right now in competition barbecue, or is there a potential of that happening?
Yeah, I tell people, you got to know how to cook. You can't come watch me cook and think you know how to cook. You have to learn how to cook on your cooker. I'm sure Baskin-Robbins has 52 flavors for a reason. And, your flavor profile that you like may not be what I serve. And I'm not saying that I necessarily use in competition the flavor profile that I like. I use in competition what I hope that the general Joe Q public of judges will like. And, I show that to them. I let them taste that. I make it with them. And they can open up a bottle of my sauce and taste it, this versus this. It comes down to you have to know how to cook. And these teams, there's several teams in the Memphis circuit right now that are all cooking together, and they're all sharing secrets. But the thing is, they're watering their product down because there's 4 or 5 teams cooking the same product. So, I really try to explain to people, learn how to cook on your cooker, and learn a flavor profile that works for you.
And there you have it. From September 20th, 2010, Greg Rempe, Melissa Cookston, the winningest woman in barbecue. Hope you enjoy the new background music. Don't be surprised if some of the old stuff creeps in here and there just a bit. I've come a little bit fond of it in the past few weeks. Hey, you want to hear the rest of this episode? Head on over to the bbqcentralshow.com. You can listen to the entire episode. You can find an episode of anything you want to listen to. While you're there, be sure you subscribe to the BBQ Central Show via podcast. Never miss an episode of that show or this show again. Thanks so much for checking it out. Until next time, I'm your host, Jon Solberg, and I will talk to you soon.